Hello and welcome to the video. This is a Patreon subscriber request. This one is for Tom. So what Tom was finding is that as you change the rates or add things like dual rates to something like a fixed wing model, the amount of trim that's being sent across is also impacted. Let me just show you what he's seeing. Let's call the plain test. We'll accept all the defaults. Let's have ones actually, because that's a good one to show. There we go. So there's our new model, and what we're going to do is going to go into mixes. We'll change the ailerons, so we're going to have this. If the switch is in the back position, we have 100%. Let's copy and paste that, edit the second one, and this time we'll just have 50% rates, and we'll have it when SA isn't in the back position. There we go. So now if we simulate this, there's aileron, channel 4 moving. Let's hold X. Now if we add a load of trim, so the trim's at 24.4 and we're in high rates. If now we switch into 50% rates, look at what happens to the trim. It is cut in half, and that's because what happens in the radio, it kind of proratas the trims as it comes through. Now the easiest way to get around this, if we just went into the Trim simulator, we've looked at this in another one of the quick tips. If you just go through, go into the outputs, go to the very bottom and say trims to sub trims, that will save these trim settings out of the way and reset the trims, and then that won't happen. But there's a lot more to trims on the radio, and there's another way that you could fix it if you wanted to, but it's a little bit complicated. Before I show you that, let me just show you something else in flight modes. Now we've done a whole other video in flight mode, so it's worthwhile going and having a look at the OpenTX mix school because we cover it in depth in there. But flight modes allows you at the flick of a switch to display things on the screen. But you'll notice here that flight mode 0, which is what you're in if you don't do anything on the radio at all, you're always using this one, it has their own trim. But as you move into the different flight modes, you get a huge amount of trim options. Either disable the trim or take it from flight mode 0, or use the flight mode 0 trim as a basis for the trim in this mode with the own trim as an offset. There's loads and loads of different ways to do it. Now I'm not going to go into that in this, I just want to make you aware of that, because occasionally if you start playing around with flight modes and you're not watching what you're doing with this, you can get into a bit of a tricky situation with trim where you might have the plane completely happy in one particular configuration and then very unhappy in another one. And actually having the flight modes like this is great, because what you could do is have your own trim for each of these settings, and then that way, if for example you have one configuration of the plane with the gear down, the flaps down and those things, and the trim needs to be different, then you can make this into the gear down setting, and all of those separate trims can be stored here, and by activating flight mode 1 you get all those back. Let me just put that back to where it was so we don't get into trouble. Okay, now the other way that we could get around this so that we don't have to go into the menu in flight and save the trims that we want into the sub trims as we've just looked at, but actually have dynamic trims that are not affected by rates. There's a couple of ways you can do it, but this is one of the ways. So we're going to go back into mixes, and this time what we're going to do is we're actually going to say we want to have an offset set as global variable 1, and we are going to say okay, we're going to do it again offset global variable 1. In fact, actually, you know what, let's remove the trims, otherwise we'll be doubling up. There we go. So now we have, for both of the positions for the dual rates on aileron, we have the trims not been included in this particular channel, and we're going to use global variable 1. So global variable 1 is the one we're going to use to store the trim position, and that's going to be the same irrespective of how much weight we're taking from the aileron channel. So what we're going to do, go into special functions, we're going to say when the aileron trim left, I'm going to zoom down here and we're going to say adjust global variable 1, increment -1, turn that little guy on. We're going to go because you can even choose the trim tabs in here. This is how cool this technology is, because it is uber powerful. So put that to +1. Whoop. Right, okay. So now what should happen is, if we look at the global variables, there we are. If we move the aileron trim, you can see that the global variable itself is actually changing, but it is remaining constant. If we look at the outputs, you can see that that global variable is being reflected in the trim. So the global variable is 15 and the trim is 15 as well. Now if we move into the different rates with the SA in the top and middle position, it isn't affected at all. So if we are flying like that, we can see that we have dual rates. It's going to double up the value of the channel, but if we do our trims, then the trim value is going to remain exactly the same, and we can see that by, if we just put a little bit of trim in again, put it onto 13 and change it between the two, is going to be consistent. So that's one of the tricks. You can use global variables, and global variables are great because they appear everywhere and they are static. We can use the trim tabs to actually adjust the global variable, then use the global variable to actually set the offset for the particular channel that you're interested in, and that way you don't have to worry about having different trims in different flight modes if that's what you don't want. Thank you for taking the time to watch that video, and particularly for watching right to the very end. We try and release a video on Tuesday and Friday, and sometimes we'll release 1 or 2 extra ones in a week as well. All of the videos on the channel are organised into easy to use playlists, so do have a look in there, because if you're interested in a subject, we organise all the videos on that subject so you can find them easily all together in one place. If you like what we're doing, then please like and subscribe and tell others about the channel so they can come and join as well. We're available in all of the usual social media places, particularly in places like Instagram, Twitter, and we also share all of our 3D designs on Thingiverse.